Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Canepa and I live in Hampton. In early May, the Daily Press ran the front page story about newly completed archival research by Robert Kelly, the Casemate Museum's historian. That story pertained to Mr. Kelly's completed research on the enslaved and contraband laborers who worked at Fort Monroe during the 19th century. The story, however, only briefly touched on his ongoing research to identify by first and last name both the enslaved people that helped build Fort Monroe and those who sought refuge at the fort during the Civil War. Nor did it mention the newly discovered evidence presented in his Yale University Journal article that may substantiate the oral tradition of Shepard Mallory as one of the first three contrabands. However, instead of permitting Mr. Kelly to further advance his significant Fort Monroe research, the Daily Press reported Robert Kelly was fired on May 24th by Fort Monroe Authority. Fort Monroe now, in my opinion, is without one of the most dedicated, professional, articulate, and passionate historians Fort Monroe has had in decades. And I worked here for 43 years, so I know about that. I am not the only one who was shocked to learn and read that Robert Kelly's firing was denied due process, and even that the Fort Monroe Authority did not discuss Mr. Kelly's firing with his direct supervisor, Casemate Museum Director Robin Reed. What were the Fort Monroe's authorities' motives in firing Robert Kelly? Since June, letters of questions about the firing, along with the support for Robert Kelly, have been sent to the Fort Monroe Authority and printed in the newspapers. Many called for an independent review of his firing and a reinstatement, of course, if the review finds the firing unjustifiable. An independent review is the most logical approach to this situation and an approach I strongly approve. However, it is important this board understand the significance of Mr. Kelly's research and his contributions in telling Fort Monroe's freedom story. That said, I personally would like to know what Fort Monroe is doing to continue the research that Mr. Kelly published and started before he was fired. Executive Director Oder, for legal reasons, you probably cannot answer questions about the firing, but shadowing the Daily Press editorial of 15 September, please address the following questions today or to the Daily Press for publication. What specific steps has Fort Monroe taken to continue the archival research that Mr. Kelly started, and who now is leading the project? Since Mr. Kelly's dismissal, how many times has the new project leader or Casemate Museum staff visited the National Archives, the Library of Virginia, Library of Congress, or other places to continue or conduct their own primary source research started by Mr. Kelly? Research is conducted in archives or libraries, and we all deserve to know if this work truly is continuing after your abrupt dismissal of Mr. Kelly. It must continue. Fort Monroe must commit to this project. In closing, please sincerely consider these comments and promise the public that the historic research will continue and that this board also will consider an independent review of Robert Kelly's dismissal. Robert Kelly, Fort Monroe's history, and all Fort Monroe supporters deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Canepa. Next.